Um, Under normal conditions, the Iditarod Trail to every classroom iTrek program takes place over the span of an entire year. But as we all know, this is not a usual year, so we've developed and are offering this virtual series. And we're hoping to return to a more normal format next year as soon as possible. We'll see when that happens. I want to let you know that if you don't already, that you can apply for one UAA graduate credit. And in order to get the credit, you participate in these webinars, which are also being recorded. So you're welcome to then look at the recordings if you're not able to make some of the sessions. UAA does require 30 hours of extra work in addition to the webinars. You guys are already doing a lot of that work as teachers, so the application of what you're learning here to your classroom, just the regular planning that you're doing and teaching will count for a lot of those 30 hours. And then we'll have one call of the teachers to join together and share ideas and on Zoom, and then there's a 1 to 2 page reflection paper. So if you're interested in applying for more credit or interested being on the list to be part of iTrek next year, please let us know. And you can email itrekalaska@gmail.com. I'll give that address when we get toward the end. Here's what we're hoping to go over today. Please mute your audio, as you know. If you've got the bandwidth, turn on your video, because that way we can build a community of practice of everybody who's here. We're going to be talking some, and feel free to use the chat feature. And I think that Molly and Louisa will be helping me to monitor that, so you can we can be part of the conversation in that way. Or we're a small enough group, there are only, I think, 10 of us, so feel free just to speak up as well. If you want to, you can raise the hand raise feature or just raise your hand yourself. And we are recording, so just look your best. What I want to go over today is an overview of place-based service learning. What is it? What are the goals? What are the principles? What are some examples of what it looks like and how you might apply it to your classroom? Place-based service learning is in a family of programs that include place-based education, service learning, environmental education, education for sustainability. You've probably heard of one or more of those, and they all kind of fit together and accomplish a lot the same kinds of things. Connecting kids to place, connecting kids to real environmental issues, teaching kids to become active, engaged citizens in our democracy moving forward. The interesting thing, I think, about place-based learning is it's grounded in the particular place where you live. So it's grounded in the geography, the culture, the values, what makes your community special, which means that when we're doing place-based learning in Vermont, where I live, it looks really different from when we're doing place-based education in Alaska. I do a lot of work also really all over the country, but especially in Georgia these days. And so it looks really different in Atlanta from what it looks like in, in Anchorage. So it's taking the special resources of the community, bringing them to bear on training that's happening to kids. It also means getting kids out into the community. So kids are oftentimes, once they've become familiar with a part of their community, they're designing and carrying out some kind of service project that helps to meet the school's educational objectives. As they carry out that project, they develop a sense of their own self-efficacy, they develop a belief in their own ability to make a change, and they begin to be able to actually make a difference in the community as well. I just wondered, how many of you are familiar with with some of those ideas? Place-based learning, if you could just do it, just a show of hands. Yep. So I can't quite see everybody, but it looks like a lot of people, you're familiar with some of those thoughts. So good, I'll try to, oh great, Toomey as well. So and Brian, looks like everybody is, awesome, good. So that means we'll be a good community of learners today. And I'll try to race through some of the material and give us a chance to tap what you guys all know and learn from one another as we go forward after a little later in the program. There are 3 goals of place-based service learning. I like to think of them as feeding 3 hungry birds with the same seed. One of those goals is student achievement. So, and that's, generally what's considered to be your job as teachers. You're trying to help kids perform well in basic skills, problem solving, teamwork, lifelong learning. maybe you don't always think of it as part of your job, but I think it also is, to create a lifelong commitment to volunteer service and stewardship, to get kids who really want to be part of making a difference and making the world a better place. It's sort of part, it's we're trying to raise kids who can be active citizens and who know how to participate in our democracy. Another of the goals of place-based service learning is environmental quality, which you might not think of as sort of part of your job description as a teacher, but I'd like to argue that I think it can be when you give kids a chance to make a meaningful difference in making the environment better, then they learn better and they learn faster and they believe in themselves more. So in solving local problems, you actually are helping kids to learn more. And then lastly, community vitality. So having kids who are making a difference pulls their parents into the school. It gets the school out in the community. It creates a healthier community, so you get economic health and diversity, can go a long way towards social equity. Those strong partnerships that weave together the community in a healthy way make our whole region stronger. I did notice as I was putting this picture in today that why is the teacher doing the talking and the kid standing behind her? I was like, this is a terrible picture, but I'd already put it together in the PowerPoint. I would like to see one of those kids standing in front and the teacher standing behind, so I'm going to have to swap that one out. Let's see. Quickly, place-based service learning covers the whole range of academic areas, everything from the sciences to social studies, politics, language arts, writing, arts, appreciation, a lot of math skills. It's all of those things. I think when people used to talk about environmental education, they think more about nature and science. But I really think that place-based service learning is broader in that it pulls in all of the aspects of the community, really pulling everything together. It also is developmentally appropriate. So you don't want to take a second grader and teach them about devastation in the rainforest. They don't have the emotional capacity to deal with that kind of tragedy, and they can't even conceptualize developmentally something as far away as the rainforest. So what the idea of place-based service learning is that you're teaching kids about what they are developmentally ready to understand. So when you're working with little kids, kindergarten, first grade, you're talking about things that are going on at home and in the schoolyard, that kind of thing. As they get into third, fourth, fifth, you might start looking more at the neighborhood level, the watershed level, state level. And then as they get older into high school, then you can begin to think more, how does our state fit into the nation? How does our nation fit into the globe, and that kind of thing, and begin to think even about particular study, focus study in different parts of the world. So if you're teaching, fourth graders, what would be some examples of things that might be appropriate in the schools where you're teaching? Can you think of topics to either put in the chat or just say out loud? What are the kinds of topics that you think make sense that, say, a fourth grader could glom onto? I'll say in Vermont, we do a lot about the forest. We do a lot about stuff like gray squirrels. We do it because kids see them everywhere and they can get excited about them. We do a lot about how the rivers flow and understanding watershed and how, different, we look at county level government, that kind of thing. Does that resonate with what you're doing in Alaska as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little bit older students, but yeah, that's definitely you're trying to get, starting them with getting them familiar with the local environment and then moving on from there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I just think it makes sense. And one of the things we've learned from place-based learning is that teachers get more excited. If you're teaching straight out of a textbook, it just isn't as energizing as having a local issue going on in your community and using that to help teach a program. It can transform school culture. So teachers are connecting with specialist teachers. They're connecting with a lot of the school staff in the cafeteria, the when in normal times, the grounds, that kind of thing. So people build connections and learn better together. And what is interesting to public lands is that you help students become stewards and become active citizens. So there are a lot of things that place-based learning isn't. It's not just a one-time event. It's not just a field trip. It's not just an environmental education unit, a guest speaker. It's not just doing a service project where you go out and work in a soup kitchen or pick up litter without learning about that. It's a whole lot more than that. I want to share an example of place-based service learning that I love from Girdwood, Alaska, and I'm hoping that maybe I can get you, Louisa, to tell this story.
Sure, I'm just turning on my camera. So in Girdwood, Alaska, which is a community at the base of a ski slope south of Anchorage, two teachers, a first grade teacher and a second grade teacher, joined forces to teach a unit about bears. And they were aware that their community had a bear problem. There were bears getting into food every year, pet food, bird seed, other things, and causing problems. And every year, bears were getting killed by people in defense of life and property. So they knew about this, and I'll say that they ended up harnessing the power of a local group, the Anchorage Bear Committee, which
ABC.
ABC.
I think that's cool.
And that is a group of land managers in the Anchorage area that joined forces to develop bear messaging. At least the education group of it, they came to be to develop clear messaging about bear safety and work in the community to share those messages. So these teachers, I really want to focus on what they did and how it came out. But if you have questions about how it all worked with the Bear Committee, I'm happy to answer those. But anyway, at the start of their unit, the teachers had an interest in these bears, and at the start of their unit, they talked to kids about bears and discovered that the kids had really negative views about bears. They saw bears as pests. So they had the students write stories about bears, their encounters with bears, and they had them collect other stories, and they wrote all these up, and then they graphed them. And they discovered that most of the problems were about bears getting into trash and food. And basically, by graphing it all, the kids themselves came to the conclusion that the community did not have a bear problem. They had a people problem. And that maybe they could do something about that. And some biologists came and shared information about bears with the kids and told the kids, how they saw the issue too, and asked the kids if they might be able to help. And the kids were really excited to see if they could, in fact, do something to change people's behavior in Girdwood around bears. And so what they ended up doing with guidance from their teachers is start writing PSAs, public service announcements, for the local radio station. The first graders did that, and the second graders focused drawing pictures to communicate key bear safety messages. And they, drew in a lot of help from a lot of experts. They had help from the school district STEM department, from biologists, and educators from the Forest Service and BLM and Fish and Game. The local radio station donated hours of time to help the kids record their messages. And the kids started with this idea of the messages, and then they actually expanded it into a week-long campaign of programming and just opportunities for people to learn more about bears. And they showcased their PSAs during that week too. And I think, Delia, that you have
I do.
PSA to play, and I want you all to know the PSAs that the kids made aired all summer long in Girdwood. So on the local radio station. So it was pretty.
There are a lot of them. I think there are at least 6. I was just going to play one right now. Here we go.
Live in Girdwood Forest with a cub behind my knee. I'm looking for some dinner for my little one and me. We'll forage for some berries, chow down some tasty fish. In the bottom of a garbage can will I find a tempting dish. Oh, please, Girdwood, don't tempt me with your trash. 'Cause if my cubs will get a meal, they'll keep on coming back. Let's keep bears wild and people safe. Store your garbage responsibly. For more information, visit www.alaskabears.alaska.gov. Sponsored by Wild and the Wild Girdwood. Miss Stinson's first grade class in KUL 80.9 Girdwood.
So apparently the people who live in Girdwood said that they were just looping that whole summer, these ads, and it was quite something to hear. So Louisa, thanks for telling that story. What questions do you have before we move on about that one example? And then I want to just tell some principles in support of that example. Good. Well, Louisa's not going anywhere, so you can ask her later if you want. Let's see. So the people who've been working on place-based service learning include folks really from all around the country. I've been being a trainer and facilitator in a forest for every classroom, FEC, a park for every classroom, which is PEC, a trail to every classroom, which is Appalachian Trail, TEC, Iditarod Trail to every classroom, ITREC. WEC is a watershed for every classroom. So there are these programs going on all around the country, and they've all come together and co-written a manual, which ITREC uses, and have come up with some principles. There used to be 11. People felt that was too many to remember, and so they've worked and played around, and we've gotten it down to 6. And I wanted to share those 6 principles. You might or might not agree. I think these are for you to take and leave and use as part of your teaching if they make sense to you. The first is that place-based service learning is grounded in place. That means that it's connected to the local community, it's relevant to the local community, it's part of the local culture, local landscapes. I've done quite a lot of work with place-based service learning in inner city communities in Boston. And their communities they have children advocating for food safety and food security, which is very different from what would be happening in my community in rural Vermont. Or for example, in this community, which is rural New Hampshire, Gorham, New Hampshire, they spent a lot of their time trying to advocate for a town forest and for educational programs in the town forest. So it just looks really different no matter where you do it. A second principle that I wanted to talk about is that it's real. So instead of hypothetical cases, place-based service learning engages kids in real things that are really happening in their community. This graffiti was painted up on an overlook in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. And the teacher, it's a famous overlook, everyone loves to go up there, you can see forever. And the teacher had promised the kids that if they read a certain number of books in the 6th grade class, that their prize would be they could go up to the overlook. So they went up to the overlook, and the kids were really bummed to see all this graffiti. And the teacher hadn't even thought about it when she offered this as a prize. The kids got up there, and they were quite disturbed to see all this graffiti and said that they wanted to do something about it. And she saw that it was a teachable moment. And so she had them think of lots of different ideas of what could you do about the graffiti. You could chisel it off, you know, whatever. And they did some research and they found that there's a product called elephant snot, which is non-toxic. It's pretty healthy. You know, it doesn't harm the rock. That seemed like the safest alternative, but it takes a lot of water. And the kids decided they were going to scrub the rock off, and they'd have to carry 45 gallons of water up there. So they partnered with a local trail club. They partnered with parents. People donated gloves. They donated snacks. They did a whole trail day, and they pretty much got it off, as you can see, using with grown-ups helping, but kids designing it, graphing out what was going to be needed, writing the letters to ask for help and donations. The kids really took it on, and it was very powerful for them in terms of feeling like they had made a difference in their community. Another principle of place-based learning is the idea of empowering, that kids have a real role in making decisions in projects, not inappropriately. I mean, you don't sort of say, what do you want to do, and open it wide open, but depending on their grade, they might decide, for example, as they did in Girdwood, are we going to do PSAs or are we going to do posters? You know, or you know, what will be our, you know, who might we reach out to help us? This picture shows a project in a community where there had been a lot of heavy erosion on a trail, and it was a community that had an elderly population living up on a hill and that needed to get down into the town every day to get their coffee and newspaper. And so the high school kids came up with this design of a way that they could all install rocks, working with some people in the community who had trail building expertise, and build in a trail that would work for the senior community. And the students were really motivated. My favorite story that one of the physics teachers told me was that he had a kid come up to him and he said, "Mr. Evers, I just want to let you know that tomorrow is senior skip day." It was, you know, the senior year. The kids, everyone knows it's a secret thing, you know, but everyone knows, but nobody knows that the kids are all going to skip and they're all going to go have a thing. He said, "Don't tell anyone, but I just want to let you know I'll be here because I know you need me to help with the project." You know, this was a kid who was not successful at school usually, and you know, he was just barely graduating, but he had found his thing, and you know, it makes such a difference. I'm sure you all as teachers have stories like that too. So gives that kind of investment. A fourth principle is that it's collaborative. So you're trying to find opportunities that pull together mutually beneficial partnerships. So you don't want to have local nonprofits or agencies, Campbell Creek Science Center, whoever, helping you just to help you. You want them to benefit as well. Both sides should contribute. So in this example, this is a place where the Appalachian Trail comes into Shepherdstown, West Virginia, or Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, and these dirty, smelly hikers kind of come out into this beautiful historic town, and it's really confusing. And there used to be a little kiosk there all shut up with bullet holes that, you know, it's one of those brown federal kiosks. And the kids decided that they would help create signage that would let people know, do you go to, you know, drop into the historic town, maybe spend a little money on a nice burger and whatever, or do you keep going, you know, on the trails this way? And they created these beautiful signs in partnership with the federal government, which is how they got them printed so beautifully. It's hard to tell, but the photos in these signs are all of them. The kids took pictures of themselves. They star in all these signs, but it has become a really effective kiosk. And what's happening in the bottom picture there is a ribbon cutting ceremony with some state officials who are so grateful to the kids for the work that they've done. A fifth principle of place-based learning is the idea that it's integrated across the disciplines, and integrated sort of throughout different aspects of the school. In this case, these kids in Littleton, New Hampshire, just the state over from me, are their town was going to repave the whole street, and they were trying to see if there was a way or that they could have the snow melt on the sidewalks and not have to plow all that salt into the Ammonoosuc River, the nearby river, because they salt the roads there. And so this is kids working with their maintenance staff at the school, as well as with different engineers from all around the community to try to figure out this problem. What were some opportunities they could do to rethink this, since it was going to be rebuilt at the time? And they ended up figuring out a way to circulate antifreeze type fluid through the chimneys in the town, and then circulate that under the sidewalks and melt the snow on the sidewalks without having to use salt. And they actually installed it in the entryway to the whole new high school. So again, lots of pulling in everything from science and math to letter writing, very interdisciplinary, but also pulling in school staff and partners. So a wonderful integrative effort. And then lastly, place-based service learning is rigorous. It can't be an add-on. It has to be helping you to accomplish what you already were wanting to accomplish in terms of your goals as a teacher. It has to be, kids need to be learning, not, passing tests, learning well, we got that, and they're excited about it. So it sort of helps you to do what you're already going to do in a better way. And an essential part of that is reflection, and having kids think about what they're learning, process what they're learning, feed that back. And we'll be doing a session on reflection coming up a little bit later in January that I'll let you know the details about in a minute. So thinking about starting where you as an educator are coming from, where you want to go to, and then how you can get there, working with your students, working with some kind of project-based learning. I wanted to share one more example, and Louisa, I'm hoping you can help me with this one too. We can tell it together. Louisa's better at telling these stories than I am, but in the early days of iTrek, Louisa and I went down to, we're down in Seward, and we were working with one of the iTrek teachers who wanted to engage her 5th grade students in science. And she just wanted to do it someplace that was walkable from the school. That was her goal. Super simple. I want to get my kids outside and somewhere that's walkable, and we're going to do science. So she chose this creek near the school, and she got her kids doing water quality testing there. The kids noticed that this creek smelled terrible. It was really smelly, and it had a lot of trash, like old car tires and things like that. And so the kids said, well, this isn't good enough. And the kids were the motivation for what turned into a multi-year enormous project. Louisa's my fact checker. Have I gotten anything? Have I done any hyperbole yet?
No, you're great.
I'm still on track. Okay, so this creek, Scheffler Creek, comes out in Seward, and it's a famous salmon creek, but the salmon numbers had declined within the city limits. So in fact they called it Fish Ditch, the part when it was inside the city limits. So the students got really excited about wanting to do more. She gathered all of their ideas, and she led them through a process of choosing what they would want to do next. They adopted the creek, and they came up with a whole action plan, and that turned into this huge project. So over the course of 2 years, they conducted all kinds of tests for water quality. They shared those with city leaders. They cleaned out the trash. And then they convened a meeting of all of the groups in Seward that are related to the creek to see who could help. So they basically pulled together 17 adults. And I just remember so well, you probably do too, Louisa, one day the kids were taking us on showing us the creek and walking around, and this one adult who was along on the tour said, we never would have done it. We never would have come together if it wasn't for the kids. The kids invited us. You can't say no to kids. So we all came together and look what's happened, so it was, the kids had really played a fundamental role in kind of making that happen. They got the city to stop mowing the banks so that there could be natural vegetation along the banks. They planted local vegetation. They got a $25,000 grant to do the re-veg. And they passed legislation protecting the creek and officially changing the name back to Scheffler Creek from Fish Ditch. So that stuff it took a while. It sounds kind of daunting if you think, oh, how can I do that? I'm just a teacher. But over time, it really worked. And there were lots of partners who joined in based on the momentum and in the enthusiasm of the kids. So the local landowners, Borough Assembly, us, the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, and the Seward City Government. So lots of people came together and helped. The Rotary Club. They were able to cover lots of important topics for 5th and 6th graders. So all of that water testing stuff that you can see here, oxygen, turbidity, air temperature, that was all stuff that they were measuring in language arts. They worked on letter writing and persuasive writing. In social studies, they learned how government works, organizational skills, and math. They collected all this data. And in arts, they made this beautiful collage of watercolor paintings that you can see, and they called it the watercolor quilt and displayed it in the town hall to raise visibility for the project. So I say it kind of went on and on. It was quite an amazing project. Louisa, what else can you say about this?
The only thing I'd add, I think, because it's amazing. Already everything that you've described is amazing. Another thing that they did is Scheffler Creek was not included under, and I don't remember the exact legal protection, but it was not protected as an anadromous stream within the laws that protected the other anadromous streams in the region, and the kids got it added to that law. So it was really quite amazing what they did.
I think it's amazing that they got a law to protect an anadromous stream, and I, an adult, do not know what anadromous means. Does that mean salt and fresh water?
It's a stream. Well, it's a stream that supports anadromous fish, and anadromous fish are fish that are born in fresh water, go out to salt water,
Okay.
grow up, and come back to spawn.
Cool. I was pretty close. Okay.
Well, that's good catch.
No, I just realized I had to
It might
learn.
be an unfamiliar term.
I just want to think about some of the ways that you are already doing place-based service learning in your classroom, and some of the ways that you might have seen it going on in your school or in other schools where you've worked, and or anywhere else. So I'm gonna I thought we could do a Jamboard together. So I've got let's see if this works. Got a Jamboard link for us in the chat. So I thought if you could go to that Jamboard, and I'm curious, how many people are familiar with Jamboard already and use it like every other day? Yes, I thought so. So if you guys are teachers, you've probably done this a lot. I know when I did the demo this morning, a couple people didn't know. So maybe what I'll do is a really quick Jamboard demo, but this is going to be boring for you people who already know what you're doing. So I should have you do the Jamboard demo. You'd probably do a better job than I would. So this isn't my very best strength, but anyway, here's the Jamboard, and I'm doing the, looks like you guys are all already there. Man, teachers, you guys are like, they're so fast. For people who don't know how to do this, which is, I think, probably nobody, if you just click on, let me go to the actual, oh, no, I'm there. Click on one of these things that looks like a sticky note over here. We have 4 colors. We have a question in red, a question in blue, a question in green, a question in yellow. So, and the question is examples you've seen of some of these principles. And I chose the 4 that I thought were the most, I didn't choose rigorous because I think that's sort of a given, but I wanted to talk about, these are the 4 that I thought would be most relevant for us. So choose a sticky note over here, match it to the color. Pink is going to be the same thing as red. That's the best we could do. and write your answer. So an example you've seen of grounded in place in your school is, what would be an example? Having, doing maybe doing neighborhood studies. Boy, that's going slow with this many people, isn't it? And then you hit save. And then you pull it down to be in the column underneath grounded in place. So why don't we just work silently for about 3 minutes and try to put at least one under each principle, one example. So blues under blue, greens under green, and of examples you've seen of these principles in action, either in your own classroom, in your school, in another school where you've worked, if you've got kids in your kids' schools, any of those places. What questions do you have before we go into our 3 minutes of silent working together? Okay, let's do it. Oh, to start a new sticky. So click over here on the sticky note, click it once, and then choose the color that you want your sticky to be. And then you can just start typing. Or no, you have to click and then start typing, and then hit save. And then you can move it around and to wherever you want. You guys have got so many ideas. I'd love to talk our way through some of these. So I was curious that working with the community council to discuss the needs of the neighborhoods, it really interestingly is both collaborative and grounded in place. Whose was that? I just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about the Jamboard together, and I'm wondering, can everybody see it, or do I need to do a screen share to see it? Can everybody see the Jamboard okay? Yeah. So I'm just curious, let's just have a conversation out loud. We don't need to do this in the chat. Let's move on to the different ones related to studying the water in the local creek too. I was curious about those. Is anyone willing to share who added those in there?
Sure, I'll go.
Thanks, Tumi.
No problem. Yeah, it's a pretty common program we have here at the Science Center, Camel Creek. Taking kids out there of between like 4th and 6th grade and going down and testing the quality of the water with like and pH. It's something kids tend to get into pretty well.
Nice. I see that there are a bunch of these: cleaning up a stream that runs through the campus, stream study, water testing, and even hatching salmon. So there, obviously it's a water-based state, but there's a lot about that. What about the food drive? It's interesting because, if you look at this list that you guys have come up with, a bunch of them are on the environmental side, some are on the social justice side. So, for example, who had the one about the student-led food drive? Do you mind telling us a little more about that?
So that was mine. So I teach at an alternative school. So we have kids from very different backgrounds. Some of them are for like struggling families, struggling students. So there was definitely something that was on their mind. So that was something that we set it up sort of as a competition between the different classes, and I think we had like a token prize for the classes, but it was interesting. They were into it. We gathered the supplies and then we donated to the local food bank. But unfortunately, food insecurity was something that some of them were all too familiar with.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure that it made a really big difference for for students as well. I mean, obviously, in the time of COVID, a lot of these things are, look different, but but not all of them. I was wondering, I saw the one about turning the extra parking lot into a school garden. I wonder if whoever wrote that could tell us more about that one.
Yeah, that was me, Delia. Sorry, I'll start.
Oh, that's okay.
There so you can see. Yeah, so at a school that I worked with, we actually went on a tour of another school and this was in Hawaii back when I lived on the Big Island. And one school had this like kind of weirdly large parking lot, and it was taking up space because not a lot of the students either walked or they took the bus, or for whatever reason they just had a huge parking lot. And so they turned, I want to say about a third of it into, like, they put raised beds on top of it and put mulch down and turned it into this really cool, really like accessible school garden. And each grade, there was only one class per grade, and each grade took one of the gardens and they grew whatever the students wanted to grow. And some of it worked really well, and some of it they maybe chose like the wrong time of year or the wrong species to plant. But it tied into food security, because it was a really rural area and food's already really expensive because most things are imported. And so it was a way to kind of supplement healthy food in a place that had limited access to fresh produce, or that was really expensive. So it was a really cool way to use space that was already there for something that would help boost food security down there.
Oh, that's cool, Molly. I was wondering if it was linked to what Tumi was saying about food security. I didn't know whether it was like a school, people go like pizza garden or something, or if it was a real significant contribution to the kids' school food needs, which is really neat. I'm curious if other people might call out some of these that you have questions about as you look at them. Like, I noticed that there are two about ice and ice measurements, but are there any you'd like to hear people talk more about? I might ask about the hydroponic garden. Was that the hydroponic garden on campus, was that growing significant amounts of food? Jennifer, is that yours?
That was mine, yeah. So I teach at a K-12 all boys school in Baltimore, and some of the upper school boys got it in their head that they wanted to build this hydroponic garden, and so they found a place on campus to build it, and it's this big like glass dome shape kind of garden that they've built. They haven't pulled anything significant out of it, but they're working on it. It's this now turned into this kind of multi-year project to kind of get it to be sustainable. It's kind of not working out as well as I think they originally intended, but it's totally student driven. It was totally their idea. They raised the funds through some grant writing, and it's been pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I used to work in a town in New Hampshire where there were a bunch of hydroponic marijuana growers, and they were raided by the police, and they took all the hydroponic growing equipment, and so the high school teacher convinced the police to let him have the hydroponic growing equipment so that they could grow food in the school garden, which I thought was quite hilarious, actually, but it did work well. Good. Well, it sounds like you guys have done a lot of this. Let me go back briefly to it. And thank you for sharing all those really good ideas. I wanted to just see what your thinking might be about how, if you were to incorporate more place-based service learning, it might help you reach your teaching goals. So I wonder if everybody could just put one idea in the chat about either, it sounds like a lot of you are already doing place-based service learning, or maybe you'd want to do it a little bit more. What would be a reason that you might do it? One thing it might help you accomplish. So I wonder if everybody could put one thought about that in the chat, a way that you might like to, if you did it more, how it might help you. And you also can feel free to say it out loud if you want. So Jane is saying, yeah, it's comprehensive, covers multiple subject areas. And I think that is right, that it can be leveled for complexity, which I think is good. Megan, why does it matter? Why does it matter to you to engage students in the local community? Like, what do you think would be the benefits of getting kids more engaged in the community?
I work at a local charter school, and part of our mission in the charter is to be doing community projects, and projects in general. We're driven by project-based learning, so this is really project-based learning as well as being place-based learning.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. Lindsay, I'm wondering if I could call you out and get you to say just a little bit more about ways you think it might be motivating and engaging for students.
Sure. I think just in general, when students can see that there's like a relevant application or it's something that matters, that they're just more eager to get involved or learn more or go home and tell their parents about it. Just taking something away from being so abstract and theoretical that you only learn in a textbook to something that, you're learning and you're doing. I've seen that in my class, that they just get excited when they're involved.
Mm-hmm. And Jennifer, maybe that's what you were getting at with student buy-in too. If it's something that they can see that they're actually excited about, it can make a real difference.
I think that's true. I think you guys mentioned that earlier when you talked about like kids who all of a sudden turn it on, right? And because they bought into it and they're there, and you always think, oh, they could do it, but until they're really buying into it, they don't always do it. And so I think that that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's such a fun picture you have, Jennifer, of your dog licking your face. It's like, oh, this is the same person. Tumi, thanks for the thought about connecting students with the school. I am so curious what you guys think about the potential for place-based service learning in this time of remote teaching that we're all involved in various ways, that keeps coming and going and coming and going in all of our states. I've been part of a group that's been helping teachers to do place-based service learning in Maine, Katahdin area of Maine, even though they're teaching remotely. I'm just curious, what you see as being either the barriers or some solutions to continuing to connect kids to reality when you're teaching remotely. What things have you done that have worked well? Megan.
Yeah, we have done some small group get-togethers specifically for some tree coring in our local park close to our school. And so just maintaining, distance and masking. So using protocols to, and small group, very small group. And yeah, just trying to be super careful and also are being careful. So
I'm sure you are. 100% trust that.
Making an effort to actually be together.
Yeah. How about for others? Tumi, what did you see as being the potential during this time of remote and weird teaching?
Well, I guess that's one of the things that we've struggled with. So we have, a lot of reluctant learners. So one of the things that we always used to do back in the days, we used to go field trips. Most Fridays we brought the kids out, and it was just really fun to see them. One day we were always some fundraiser, we were delivering phone books, and we had this one kid, like everything was a battle with him in the classroom because he was an 8th grader, he couldn't read. Mm-hmm. And he could be the tough guy, but he couldn't be the kid that couldn't read. But give him a project, and like, man, that kid, like, he worked his tail off. He was organized, he was planned. And so I guess it's one of the things that I miss. I haven't found a brilliant solution to engage the students in that way while we've been online. So
yeah,
seeing a lot of blank screens, and you don't know what's happening with the kids, and it's we're losing that connection. So that's why I was interested in the class.
Good. I'm glad you're here. What else have people found has worked well? I wonder if people, Jane, Brian, Jen, Maya, Lindsay, anybody, what have you found has worked well to keep it real in this time of remote teaching? Anything that you found is working particularly well? Jane? No. Jennifer's got a thought.
We haven't never been remote. We've been in person the whole time. So it's
wow
for us. But we've been doing a lot of like virtual field trips, and that's you were talking about field trips, and we've found some really cool like Explore by the Seat of Your Pants and organizations like that are doing kind of these really cool virtual field trips with scientists in the field. And so it takes a little bit further out. I know that one of the things you said at first was for the younger guys to keep it close to home. But to be able to kind of like Skype with scientists or Zoom with scientists who are out in the field doing some of the work that we can then take down to our stream and do has been a really cool kind of connection.
Yeah, I think if the scientists are far away, it's fine. It's more just the content that kids, they want to be able to see it and touch it and feel it. And that's why, yeah. Any other thoughts? I didn't want to cut this off before we go back to just our wrap up here. I just want to, we can take a couple minutes to address questions as we go. And then I just do want to make sure to take a minute before you go to let you know that we are doing this credit thing. It's 1 credit. It's pretty cheap. I think it's $69 maybe. And it's a graduate credit, and you just do it through UAA, and you come to the webinars or you watch the videos of them, and then apply it in your class, and we'll have one Zoom call just to talk about it and do some writing. So that's a thought. Get on our list if you want to know about iTrek once we resume. The class goes usually 3 days in Seward, and then, or starts actually 5 days in Anchorage area, 3 days in Seward, 3 days in Nome. So it's studies the whole length of Alaska, along the length of the Iditarod Trail. It's been we've done it, I think, 10 cohorts, and we're looking forward to doing that again. So get on our list, and to learn more about them, you can email us at this address that you can see here, itrekalaska@gmail.com. And this is my contact information. If you're interested, please do be in touch. We've got Nature Art coming up on January 21st, and then we'll be doing a program on reflection and how to incorporate reflection into your teaching on January 26th. So those will be, this basically same registration process you went through today, and be wonderful to see you here. Thank you so much for joining. Any last minute questions or anything anybody wants to check in about? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad to have met you all and get to talk about my favorite thing, place-based learning. And I'll look forward to seeing you at some of these other 7 webinars. I'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.